Hi everyone, welcome back to part 3 of the series. The last 2 videos have covered installation and setting up Flight Simulator and your computer ready to fly. Now we're going to go into the benchmarking, which is the way I'm going to be measuring and tweaking my performance on Flight Simulator. So I want to go through the steps that I'm using for my benchmarking and how I'm going about it, and then hopefully get your input in the comments, etc. And I'm hoping this way is going to be the correct way, or a better way of tweaking than I've done in the past. A bit more consistency, a bit more relevant to how it should be done. So these are the pointers I'm going to be using. Starting off with being realistic. Now, we all like to get Flight Simulator, we like to open it up and we like to whack the sliders right over to the right hand side and fly in amazing scenery, beautiful weather, awesome aircraft with virtual cockpits that have got all the bells and whistles, and it's brilliant. It would be absolutely brilliant if we could do that, but not all of us have got that capability, and even some of the new hardware hasn't really got the stability to run everything at full pelt. So my first thing I would say is be realistic. Don't go in there, look at your hardware, look at how old it is, look at what it's doing before you go about tweaking it. And just ask yourself, what do I want to get from it? What would I be happy flying with? Am I going to be happy at flying with a stunning looking aircraft with the scenery a little less perfect than can be? So are you willing to sacrifice a bit of scenery and weather quality for a nice smooth flying experience in a top quality PMDG that's running all the bells and whistles, nice smooth textures and everything? So as long as you've got a nice plane to sit in, are you going to be happy to sacrifice some of your outside? If you're not, then you've probably got to try and find a balance between having a half decent aircraft visually and a half decent weather, just to try and get that balance. Or maybe you want awesome scenery and you're not so worried about having a perfect aeroplane to look at. And it also depends on what sort of flying you're doing. If you're doing VFR flying, there's not going to be so much put on the actual aircraft itself. You can then tweak up some of the scenery, so you can have different profiles with that SimStarter especially, which we'll look at again. I've done a quick video, but that just goes, it's a good example of, if you're more VFR flying or you do a good mixture, you can have a setup even for your configuration and your settings in Flight Simulator X or P3D or whatever you're using, that you'll tweak for one scenario and then you can tweak back for another scenario. But you've got to be realistic. Don't go in there thinking I can have everything to the far right and it's going to be perfect, because it won't be, and you're going to get upset with it, and you're not going to enjoy it. So you've got to be realistic. That's the biggest point I'm going to make, and that's the top point. Go in there realistic. What do you want from the simulator? If you're happy to go like I'm looking for, anywhere between 25 to 30, frames per second, nice. It's going to be smooth. My eyes aren't going to see the difference probably between 30 and 40 frames and 30 to 50 frames. If I can get 25 to 30 frames consistently within my simulator, and it looks half decent, then I'm going to be happy, because the hardware here is so old I'm using. So that's my target. 30 frames per second. Nice smooth flying, no stuttering, and that's what I want. So based on that, you've then got to choose a benchmark. Choose a benchmark carefully. Now by this I mean, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a scenario, a test flight, and that test flight is what we're going to be using every single time we change something. So we keep that consistency. It's not going to be perfectly consistent because there's always little things that change, but we're going to basically go for the weather. That's going to be the same. Where we fly is going to be the same. The scenery we have installed will be the same. The aeroplane we have will be the same. The time of day will be the same. Everything we can keep the same as far as we can will be kept the same. So the changes we make will be the changes within the settings and within the CFG file. Nothing about where we're flying, what we're doing, time of day is going to change. That can all be kept the same, and that can give us a very good measure of how we're doing. Now by choosing it carefully, I mean, again, with the realistic thing, where do I fly? Where do I fly? Where do I do most of my flying? If you're flying over the outback or Rocky Mountains, if you're like bush flying and that, then you're going to want to create your test benchmark in that area. Wherever you do your flying, you want to test that in. That's where you want to fly. If you're doing the heavies and you do a lot of commercial jets and that in and out of big cities, big airports, populated with loads of AI or VATSIM traffic, then you're going to want to tailor your benchmark test to that scenario. And I'll show you what I've done with mine in a minute, and we'll go through the next few videos again. We'll show how we're going to set that up. But yeah, think about where you fly, or you might have a scenario where you think, I keep trying to fly into this area but it's not working. Make that your benchmark. If that's where your computer is stuttering and you're thinking, well, I can fly over there and it's fine, but as soon as I fly into this area it gets a bit stuttery. Use that as your benchmark. Think, okay, well, this is somewhere where the computer is struggling. Let's see if we can benchmark this, contain this area, fly through it consistently, and then we can tweak the settings to see if any of the settings that we do change can improve my experience in that area. So you've got to keep it consistent. Once you've chosen your benchmark, keep it consistent as much as we can. We don't want any huge variables. The less variables we can have, the more consistent and more what's the word I'm looking for? More accurate. That's the word. More accurate this is going to be. So apologies there. So with that, we want small changes, and these small changes will be the settings and your CFG file. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using Fraps to be my benchmark software to measure what I'm doing frame rate wise, because that's what we're measuring the frame rate, and we can also see visually if anything improves as we do the tests. Now some people would say do the test once, change something else, do another test. I like to get a good average. I want to be thorough with what I'm doing, so I'm going to be running my tests 3 times each. So I'm going to run it 3 times, and then I'm going to use Fraps will give me a readout of the results for them 3 runs. Or they get an average of that, so them 3 results will give me an average. I can then use that or change a setting, whether it be in the flight simulator settings, in my NVIDIA inspector, or the CFG file, and then I'll repeat the process. So if I'll change one thing, and when I mean one thing, I'll put an entry in the CFG file. I might tweak a slider, and if I'm tweaking a slider, it'll be 1 click to right or 1 click to left. I'm not going to go too many clicks because you might be you're changing too much. You want to see what the small changes do, because I think flight simulator is going to be very sensitive. So change one thing, run the test again 3 times. You don't have to do it 3 times, like I say. You can just do it once or twice if you're happy to do it that way. But I'm going to do it 3 times, get a nice average, and then repeat the process. Change another thing, repeat. Change another thing, repeat. And yes, it's going to take a lot of time. If you're not happy with your system and you think you've got a lot of tweaking to do, it can be very time consuming, but at least you know you're getting the best out of the hardware you've got. And you can, if you're struggling to get the experience you want, then this might be a good way for you to just spend some time, sit down and say, right, we're going to sit down and go do this properly, and we're going to get what we want out of it. Because that's what you're there. You're there to enjoy it, but you want to enjoy it and not have to go, oh well, I'm struggling to get this, I'm struggling to get that. Every time I go here, it's stuttering, it's freezing, it's locking, I'm getting out of memory errors. Let's address it. Let's do it. And then from then, once you've done this test, once you've spent like a few days just doing these tests, and hopefully from then on out, shall I say, you'll be fine. You'll have nice enjoyment flying your aeroplanes, which is what we all want. So on that, here I have my flight planner. So this is where I've set up my flight. This is the route I'm going to be taking. My benchmark is going to be about 5 minutes long. It's going to be 5 minutes long. It's going to be at 2,000 feet. And I've chosen London. I'm in the UK. I fly a lot in the UK. Not so much into Heathrow at the minute because the computer just can't handle it. So based on that, I'm going to be using Heathrow and the London area as my test benchmark test. So I've set up a flight here from Gatwick to Birmingham. I'm not going to be flying to Birmingham. I'm just using it so I can import it into the flight simulator, and we can create a benchmark off that. And if we zoom in here, so here's the Thames River flying through here. I'm going to be taking off for Gatwick. I'm going to be hitting this checkpoint, which is close to London City Airport, all at 2,000 feet. and I'm going to curve around to this Holby checkpoint intersection, and then I'm going to curve around to the left, back out towards Heathrow to the Vachon checkpoint. Here's Heathrow here. So I'm going to do a nice curve, about 5 minutes long. Nice curve, 5 minutes, over the Thames River, over London, at 2,000 feet. So everything's got to be populated. All the autogens going to be populated. All the water effects on the river are going to be there. I've got add-on airports, add-on scenery. I've got Orbex, so it's going to be a full-on slog for the computer to take it all in. Plus, I'm going to be using the iFly 737 as I don't have the PMDG, and I fly the iFly quite a lot. So I'm using an aircraft that I use quite a lot. I'm flying over an area that I know is going to struggle with, and I'm hoping this is going to give me a good set of results, and I can tweak, and I can measure against, and I can benchmark. So I've set it up. Umbar, Holby, Bayton, and then out to Birmingham. Now I've done it this way so people can see what I'm doing. But also, if you're not using an add-on aircraft and you're using the default aircraft, which you can do, you can use the default aircraft if you use them more often than not. Then you can then import this into your default aircraft and use it like you would do an FMC on a add-on aircraft like your iFlys and your PMDGs. So this is the route I'm taking. We can import this into the aircraft, and then we'll always have this route going in there. And we're going to use this in the next video to help set up everything, so we can create our test flight, as it were. So that's that. And the settings I've used. No, I don't want to do that. Settings. So you know I'm not at full right. So you can see where I'm starting from. Customize. So I'm using got that GTX 480 set up. It's a custom setting. I've saved this as a base Flight Simulator X setting, so I can load it anytime I want. Start again. So you've got screen resolution is right, bilinear, anti-aliasing is off. As you've seen in the previous video, I'm using NVIDIA Inspector and the graphics card to do all the hard work. I've got none of these checked. I've got this on global resolution high. Now a lot of these settings in the scenery file, as you'll see in a minute. Aircraft, cast shadow on the ground. Yep, landing lights and limit ground. So I've got them on. So I've got a bit of detail. I know what I want. I know what I don't want. So I'm not so worried about aircraft catching shadow on itself. I don't want the tooltips, graphics. I'm not so worried about lens flare, light bloom, and all that in the minute. If I've got a few spare frames and I can sneak it in later on, I will. But for the time being, I'm not too fussed. I just want a nice smooth flying experience. And once I've got it in DirectX 9, I'm going to then launch it in DirectX 10 and see what extra performance can be gained on that. So scenery, these are all, because I'm running Orbex, these are all set up to the Orbex recommendations. So I'm going to try and keep them like that. If I can keep them like that and then tweak it in other areas, I'll be happy. Land detail texture on, ground scenery shadows off, and I've got special effects details high. So that's Orbex recommendations. So I'm going to keep that like that. Weather, maximum, cloud draw down there. I'm not using third party. I normally use Rex, but I'm not going to use it for this because it's another variable that can come in. So I've just got a standard weather theme set up, and that's what I'm going to be using. Traffic. Again, I've just got airport vehicle density on, and that's always going to stay the same. So this is always going to stay the same. So if I change something, so if I do want to go to scenery and change maybe autogen density down a bit, I'll knock it down a step and then I'll do another test. Once I've changed it, another test. But I think this, apart from the aircraft settings and maybe the graphics here, this is as good as it's going to get within Flight Simulator. I now need to go outside Flight Simulator on the CFG file and the NVIDIA Inspector and tweak it that way. So that's what I'm going to be starting with. So my baseline is going to be based on these settings, and we're going to use that route. And in the next video, we'll show you how we set that up. So see you then. Thanks for watching.